On Wednesday, December 13th, 2006, at 6:30 in the morning, Hull Police and Fire Departments responded to a 911 call for an unresponsive 4-year-old girl at 70 Lynn Avenue in Massachusetts. Michael Riley told the police his daughter was dead and that she choked on her vomit. Officers responded and observed Rebecca Riley, a 4-year-old girl, lying on the floor in a bedroom beside the bed. The bedroom was identified as belonging to her parents. Captain William Souza of the Hull Fire Department examined the girl and determined that she was deceased. Responding officers briefly questioned Michael, who was seated with his wife Carolyn Riley and their 2 other children, a 6-year-old girl and an 11-year-old boy, on a couch in the living room. Michael told police that Rebecca had been sick the previous days and she was vomiting a lot. When he got up that morning, he observed that the child was dead and then he called 911. Officers secured the scene and contacted the Massachusetts State Police and the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. Carolyn and Michael told responding officers that Rebecca was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and ADHD and was on several daily prescription medications. Now, I don't know about you, but a 6-year-old being on prescription medications, for me, something is sus. Officers were directed to the parents' bedroom where a pill dispensing tray containing several pills separated into days was observed. Several bottles of prescription medication belonging to Carolyn and the 2 other children were located in the Riley's bedroom in a blue plastic bin. Carolyn told responding officers that she had given Rebecca a dose of Tylenol. The scene was photographed and processed by the Massachusetts Police Crime Scene Services. In a bedroom to the right of the kitchen on the 2nd floor of the split-level ranch, which was identified as Michael and Carol's bedroom, police observed the body of a young white female child with long brown hair, identified as Rebecca Riley, lying on the floor on top of some magazines and other paper and clothing. The room was unkempt. A blanket placed there by responding officers covered Rebecca's body. She was lying on her left side, partially on a pile of clothes and papers and stuffed brown bear. She looked as if she had fallen there. Her face and hair were covered in a frothy, foamy, reddish bodily fluid, which appeared to emanate from her nose and mouth and had also pooled on the rug. A bruise was evident on her right thigh and upper right arm. She was attired in only a pink pull-up diaper. She was wearing gold-pierced stud earrings with colored stones. Dr. Elizabeth Bundock, a pathologist from the Office of the Medical Examiner, examined the body and oversaw the transport of the body. If you are liking this video so far, please subscribe to this channel, and in case you didn't know, I do have another true crime channel with more comedic takes on crime stories. Link is in the description. Dr. Bundock secured the bill dispensing tray, an empty prescription bottle made out in Rebecca's name, and several bottles of over-the-counter medication as evidence vital to the autopsy, and transported it to the examiner's office. Seems there was a lot of pills in this house, eh? While at the house, police were approached by Kelly Williams and James McGonnell with concerns over Rebecca's cause of death, her medical history, and domestic abuse history of the family. Mr. McGonnell stated that he was Carolyn's half-brother and identified Miss Williams as his fiancée. Miss Williams and Mr. McGonnell stated that Rebecca began showing signs of illness on Saturday, December the 9th, 4 days before she died. Rebecca was observed coughing uncontrollably and vomiting. Over the course of a few days, they stated that they had repeatedly asked the Rileys to take Rebecca to the emergency room or her pediatrician. The Rileys told them that they made appointments but always offered an excuse as to why they did not go. Mr. McGonnell told investigators that he was paged early in the morning on December 13th by Hull Police Department. Mr. McGonnell explained that he worked as a tow truck driver for Surfside Towing, which provided service to Hull Police Department. He stated that he got up and heard someone having trouble breathing. The sound emanated from the room next to his bedroom, the bedroom shared by Rebecca Riley and her 6-year-old sister. Mr. McGonnell entered the room and observed Rebecca lying in a chaise lounge making gurgling sounds. Mr. McGonnell stated that he wiped some puke off her face and ran to the Riley's bedroom at the end of the hall and banged on the bedroom door and then kicked it in. He angrily begged the Rileys to take Rebecca to the hospital. Carolyn Riley got up and took Rebecca into her room. Mr. McGonnell learned that the call from the Hull Police Department did not require a response and returned to bed. He did not hear anything from the Rileys until Michael Riley told him Rebecca was dead later that morning, shortly before the police and fire departments arrived. Mr. McGonnell and Miss Williams stated that they also had concerns about the amount of medication the children took and how it affected them. They spoke of how Rebecca frequently seemed sleepy and drugged and often slept through the day, getting up only to eat. And so far, if they deliberately gave her medication to put her to sleep, that's just lazy parenting. They could not be bothered to deal with a child running around all day and playing like they always do. Maybe this couple were just a bunch of lazy bastards. They spoke of how Michael Riley repeatedly told Carolyn to medicate the children when he determined that they were acting up. Mr. McGonnell stated that he was aware that Michael had not been allowed to live with the family previously in Weymouth public housing because of a court order connected with sexual assault charges by Carolyn's 13-year-old biological daughter. Not only was Michael an incompetent parent, he was also a dirty bastard. Further, Mr. McGonnell and Miss Williams described a physical assault they witnessed on the Rileys' 11-year-old son by Michael, which occurred in October 2006. They observed Michael grab his son by the neck and pin his head against the back window of a pickup truck in an apparent uncontrollable rage. They stated that Carolyn, who also witnessed the attack, filed a restraining order but allowed it to lapse after a few weeks. They told investigators that the 11-year-old victim told them that he was frightened that his father was going to kill him. They stated that Michael was also rough with the girls and frequently grabbed Rebecca by the arm and swung her around. Mr. McGonnell stated that Michael frequently swore at the children and ridiculed them. They stated that the Department of Social Services also investigated the family on several occasions. Now, Carolyn and Michael lived previously with their children in public housing at Memorial Drive in Weymouth, Massachusetts. Michael was allowed to visit with his children regularly, and Carolyn alleged that the assault charges were false. From December 2005 through November 2006, Michael told investigators that he lived with his mother in Weymouth, Massachusetts. They moved to 70 Lynn Avenue on November 14, 2006, and Michael moved in approximately 2 weeks later near the beginning of December 2006. And this is important because 2 weeks later, that's when Rebecca died. Whilst investigators examined the immediate scene and body, Hull police officer William Zubrin was assigned to stay with the Rileys and Miss Williams' son in the finished basement portion of the house while the house was secured. He observed the two surviving Riley children and Miss Williams' son playing quietly, trading toys for pretend money. Officer Zubrin observed Michael Riley become agitated, and he repeatedly told the children to be quiet and shut up. Michael urged the officer to go upstairs and get the medication for the children. As I said earlier, the moment the children were annoying him, he just medicated them. Moron. Michael became agitated, telling the children to calm down and knock it off. Stop being loud, he said, and again requested the children's medication, claiming they are going to be a handful. Officer Zubrin did not observe any of the children's behavior to be loud, boisterous, or out of control, and stated that Michael was the only one having problems with the children. He advised Michael to wait until the scene was secured for the children's medication to be released. Now, on December the 13th And December the 14th, Michael and Carolyn agreed to be interviewed by the police department. Hull police officers stayed with them in the conference room and they observed Michael punching the wall. Michael did not appear to suffer any injury and stopped at the request of the officer. Michael told investigators that this wall punch was because of a rage disorder that he has. The issue I have with this is not the rage, it's the disorder. When you say I have a rage disorder, you're kind of seeking justification for your actions. No, maybe it was a disorder, I don't know. But when he was saying I have a rage disorder, this was another way of him saying, you know what? I'm just a fucking idiot. Carolyn and Michael stated that all three of their children had mental disorders, diagnosed and treated by Dr. Kayoko. Carolyn stated that Rebecca was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and ADHD when she was 2. Carolyn was able to recite Rebecca's prescriptions from memory. She stated that Rebecca was prescribed Depakote sprinkle capsules at 125 milligrams. Now, I have no idea what Depakote is, and while I was doing research for this case, I could have researched what Depakote is, but I didn't bother because Depakote being sprinkle sounds like something you buy at the grocery store or even on Valentine's Day. Either way, given a child this many pills at the age of 1 and 2, what on earth are you doing? This Depakote was given to help control her mood. What? She was to take 3 capsules in the morning and 3 capsules at night. Carolyn stated that the sprinkle capsules were broken and sprinkled on Rebecca's tongue. Carolyn stated that Rebecca was prescribed Seroquel pills to help calm her down and help her stay asleep at night. Carolyn stated that Rebecca was prescribed clonidine tablets that dissolved instantly to help calm her and help her sleep. Carolyn stated that Dr. Kifuji diagnosed Rebecca with ADHD and bipolar disorder when she was only 2 years old. Carolyn stated that she felt that Rebecca was displaying behavior consistent with her siblings who were also patients of Dr. Kifuji and were diagnosed with similar disorders. Carolyn said that the doctor had told her about the medications prescribed to the children and she had experience with them since the 2 other children were on similar or identical medications. And again, I'm not a doctor, but something needs to be said about this doctor. What the hell are you doing prescribing these young children with all these pills? I don't know. I know I'm ignorant, but it just doesn't feel right. Carolyn stated that she bad read the information sheet that came with the children's medication from the pharmacy. Yes, what she was saying to the police was that when this doctor gave her the prescription, she bad read it. Which makes me think, well, if you good read it, that means you can read. How the f can you not read, you muppet? Carolyn also stated that the doctor told her that she could give the girls extra clonidine. Michael told investigators about the additional dose as well and stated that Carolyn had administered an additional half a clonidine tablet on the night of December 13. Carolyn went on to say that she had given Rebecca cough and cold medicine in the past without any problems. She stated that she stored the prescription medication in a plastic dispensing tray in dosages for the week. Carolyn and Michael said that the children were aware that the medication was off limits and she never had a problem with them getting into it. She stated that she was responsible for dispensing the children's medication and Michael confirmed to the police that Carolyn was indeed responsible for all of the medications. Now, an autopsy was performed by Dr. Elizabeth Bundock on December the 13th. Dr. Bundock noted that Rebecca Riley did not die of aspiration or choking due to vomiting. She noted that the reddish, frothy bodily fluid emanating from her mouth and nose was evidence that Rebecca's death could be due to a drug overdose, but that confirmation required additional testing at the time. The doctor did note various purple bruises all around Rebecca's body. 2 were noted on the inner left thigh, 1 on the inner right thigh. 1 was also observed on the outer right thigh. Several more were noted on the other parts of the body. Dr. Bundock also observed several red marks on the victim's body. 1 red mark was observed on the inside right bicep. The red mark was consistent with a thumb print. And at the conclusion of the autopsy, Dr. Bundock was unable to determine a cause or manner of death pending receipt of further results. But even aside from the dosages of all these pills and the overdose, what's all these marks? What on earth did you do to this young girl? Investigators questioned both Carolyn and Michael about the existence of the bruises on Rebecca's body. Both denied ever grabbing Rebecca's arm, and neither could provide any explanation for any of Rebecca's bruises. Despite witness accounts of Michael grabbing Rebecca and the other children, both parents denied these accounts and stated that they disciplined the children using time outs. Michael said the most he ever did was verbally abuse the children, and sometimes he yelled out. He told investigators repeatedly that when he was enraged, he hit other objects. Michael stated that he suffered from intermittent rage disorder and bipolar disorder but was not taking medication. I'm sorry, again, you were just telling the police you're a moron. He stated that he recently attended an outpatient anger management program at Westwood Lodge after Carolyn took out the restraining order on him. Carolyn stated that she was no longer afraid of Michael and did not know why she had taken out the restraining order in October of 2006. Investigators even showed Carolyn a copy of the restraining order affidavit that she had written stating that Michael had choked out the 11-year-old son. I told you, moron. Leaving red marks on his neck and pointing out where she declared that she was afraid for her safety and that of her children. She acknowledged that she had written the affidavit but stated that their son had since realized that he loved his father and wanted him back in the house, and that Michael had apologized to their son. Carolyn stated that she took Paxil for depression and anxiety and suffered from migraine headaches and took prescription medication as needed. Eventually, investigators interviewed Dr. Kifuji and confirmed that Rebecca had been a patient since August of 2004 and was indeed diagnosed with bipolar disorder and ADHD. The doctor went on to say, based on her diagnosis on the family, mental illness was rife, and Rebecca's behavior was described by Carolyn and briefly observed by the doctor during office visits. The office visits occurred from every 2 weeks to every other month, and Rebecca's 2 other siblings were also seen. The doctor confirmed that Rebecca's medications were in the amounts as recited by Carolyn. Now, the doctor was asked if she told Carolyn or Michael if they could give extra clonidine, to help Rebecca sleep at night, and the doctor said absolutely not. The doctor stated that she had also recommended that a therapist be assigned to the Riley family. When asked if she had ever noticed anything unusual regarding Carolyn's request for medication, the doctor stated that Carolyn had called her in the early fall, claiming that she lost an entire bottle of clonidine, so the doctor gave her another one. Okay, that's fine, this can happen, right? But then, Carolyn called the doctor approximately 10 days later, claiming water had gotten into a bottle of clonidine, ruining it, and that she requested additional clonidine. Okay, fair enough, you need some more, but this is your last warning. The doctor had authorized an additional 10-day supply and then required that the prescription be filled every 10 days in an effort to avoid further accidents. Now, police officers spoke with a therapist, a licensed social worker from the South Bay Mental Health Services in Massachusetts. The therapist stated that she had worked with the Riley girls, 4-year-old Rebecca, and her 6-year-old sister at an in-home visit once a week for about an hour from May 2006 to July 2006. Now, the social worker was initially concerned by the amount and type of medication prescribed for Rebecca. The social workers told investigators that they found it unusual in her experience, especially since she did not observe any behavior consistent with the diagnosis. They felt the children required too much medication, did not want to give them the medication, but the mom kept saying children weren't sleeping, and they were hoping that prescribing Depakote and then keep the other medications down. The therapist told investigators that she filed 2 51A forms with the Department of Social Services. The first was based on watching Carolyn neglect her children. She appeared heavily drugged and unable to respond. You see, when the therapist went to visit them in the house, Carolyn literally said to her, "Oh, watch out, there's some urine on the rug." And Carolyn told the therapist, "Yeah, Rebecca, she's sleeping on the floor by the urine, it's fine." The therapist observed that Carolyn had made no attempt to clean the urine. In fact, the therapist forced Carolyn by saying, "Clean up your house. Clean this up now. What's wrong with you?" The therapist stated that she filed a second 51A on the Riley family after another visit when Rebecca's 6-year-old sister disclosed that Michael had abused her. She stated that the Department of Social Services later reported to her that both reports were unsupported. In early August of 2006, Carolyn terminated all contact with South Bay Mental Health Services, citing problems with the therapist. Yeah, you're the problem. The therapist stated that she never observed any aberrant behavior in Rebecca and really wanted to reduce her medication so that they could work on her alleged issues and see evidence of the illness. The therapist stated that both Rebecca and her sister were frequently asleep when she arrived. She recalled that she repeatedly urged Carolyn to speak with Dr. Kifuji about lowering the dosage and variety of medication that Rebecca and her sister were on. She also urged Carolyn to contact the Social Services Department to take advantage of childcare and parenting programs. Carolyn, however, did not take any of this advice. On October 11, 2006, the school nurse at the Johnson Early Childhood Center made note of a health complaint in which Rebecca was described as lethargic and too tired to play in the gym. She noted that she faxed a medical release to Dr. Kifuji. So, the medical examiner's office eventually concluded that Rebecca died from intoxication due to combined effects of clonidine and valproic acid, which is another word for Depakote. They said that her heart and lungs were damaged due to prolonged abuse of these prescription drugs. Police reports state that she was taking 750 milligrams a day of Depakote, 200 milligrams a day of Seroquel, and 0.35 milligrams a day of clonidine. Rebecca had been taking the drugs since the age of 2 for bipolar disorder and ADHD, diagnosed by psychiatrist Kifuji. And again, I know I'm ignorant, I'm not a professional, but how do you know a child at the age of 2 has bipolar? This is stupid. On February the 9th, 2010, Carolyn was found guilty of second-degree murder in the death of her daughter and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 15 years. Michael was found guilty of first-degree murder and he was sentenced to life. And my conclusion is they were just a bunch of lazy bastards. Comment, tell me what you think.